We hadn't even finished unloading the truck when Trouble marched straight across our lawn wearing a visor, high heels, and a clipboard. The sun wasn't even down yet, and we were still trying to figure out which box had the coffee maker when this lady came storming across the grass like she owned the entire neighborhood. "Excuse me," she barked, in that sharp tone people use when they think authority makes them louder. "You can't move in without signing this first." Dad turned around, still holding a box labeled, "Kitchen," fragile, sweat dripping down his face from hauling furniture all afternoon. "I'm sorry," he asked, confused. She held out a perfectly stapled packet of papers like it was some golden rule from the heavens. At the top of the first page, in bold, all caps, were the words, "Mandatory HOA Membership Agreement." "We didn't sign anything about an HOA," Dad replied, setting the box down on the porch. "The realtor said this street doesn't have one." She smiled. Tight and smug. "It didn't. But it does now. The paperwork is already being processed. Every new homeowner is required to join immediately. That includes you. It's non-negotiable." I stood beside Dad, just behind the truck, quietly watching. My little sister peeked out from the backseat window, hugging her stuffed bunny, clearly unsettled by the stranger yelling in our driveway. Mom was still inside, opening cabinets and stacking plates, unaware of what was happening out front. That's when Grandpa James, my dad's father, stepped down from the passenger side. He moved slowly, one hand resting on his cane, the other adjusting his veteran's cap, dark green with gold stitching that proudly read, U.S. Army, Retired. At 75, he still carried himself with the kind of discipline and quiet intensity you only find in career military men. He wasn't one for drama, but I saw his brow tighten the moment Karen started speaking. "Ma'am," Dad said calmly, "we bought this house fair and square. No one told us about any homeowners association." Karen's lip curled like she was chewing something sour. "It was in the works before your closing. The community is evolving, and the HOA will ensure order, safety, and harmony. That means lawn regulations, vehicle limits, noise hours, and of course, monthly dues. We're enforcing immediate compliance for all new arrivals." "You're joking, right?" I blurted before I could stop myself. Karen turned her gaze to me, eyes sharp. "Watch your tone, young man. This isn't a game. The rules are the rules." Grandpa took a step forward, steady and slow. "Lady," he said evenly, "you're standing on my son's property making threats without any authority. That's not how rules work in a free country." She tilted her head at Grandpa, eyebrows lifting. "And you are?" "General James C. Walker. Retired. And unless you've got a legal order or signed contract, you're trespassing." Her face flushed instantly. She opened her mouth but didn't say anything at first. She seemed rattled, not used to being challenged, especially by someone who didn't back down. "I'm calling the police," she finally said. "If you refuse to sign, you're in violation of pending community regulations." Dad looked stunned. "Pending? You just said the HOA was still being processed. You don't even have approval yet." "It doesn't matter," she snapped. "The bylaws are drafted. We're retroactively enforcing them." "You can't retroactively force someone into an HOA," Grandpa said with a calm firmness that almost sounded like a warning. "We've lived under dictators in other countries. They usually start by rewriting rules without consent." Karen didn't like that comparison. Her eyes narrowed, and she spun around, storming back across the lawn, one hand already pulling out her phone. "She's not seriously calling 911, Dad said." But she was. I watched her from the porch as she made the call. Loud, dramatic, full of lies. "Yes, officer, I'm dealing with a family that refuses to comply with mandatory community regulations. Yes. They're aggressive. There's a man here making threats and impersonating military personnel. Grandpa actually chuckled. Impersonating, he mumbled. I've got more scars than she's got years. 15 minutes later, 2 sheriff's deputies rolled up. Blue lights flashed across the lawn as the sun finally dipped below the trees. Karen ran to meet them, pointing toward our house like she'd just uncovered a criminal enterprise. There, she cried. They're refusing to cooperate with HOA directives. And that man, he claimed to be a general. The first deputy looked at her, then at us standing quietly on our own property. He stepped forward. Evening. We got a report about a neighborhood dispute? Yes, officer, Dad said. This woman claims we have to join her HOA. But we were never told about it before buying the house. We haven't signed anything, and we haven't agreed to join. The second deputy looked at Karen. Ma'am, do you have any legal documents proving this property is under HOA jurisdiction? Karen's lips twitched. Not yet. But the forms are at the county office. I filed them 2 days ago. The association rules are being activated. But they're not in effect yet, the deputy clarified. Which means this property isn't currently under any HOA. She stammered, but they're required to join. They moved in today. That makes them subject to the new terms. That's not how contracts work, the deputy replied. If there's no signed agreement or clause in their purchase documents, they're under no obligation to join. Karen's face turned beet red. But they're ignoring me. And that man claimed to be a general. Grandpa calmly stepped forward and handed the deputy his military ID and discharge documents. United States Army, 4th Infantry Division. 35 years of service. I don't play dress up. The deputy looked it over, nodded respectfully, and handed it back. Thank you for your service, sir. The other officer turned to Karen. Ma'am, unless you have evidence of a legal violation, we're going to have to ask you to leave these folks alone. They're within their rights. Karen's voice cracked. This isn't over. We didn't think it was, Grandpa said with a slight smile. And with that, she stormed back to her house, heels stabbing into the pavement, phone still in her hand, probably calling someone else to complain to. Dad exhaled deeply. Welcome to the neighborhood, he muttered. Grandpa looked at the house, then at us. We've seen worse. But she doesn't know who she's dealing with. And just like that, day one in our new home turned into a showdown. The next morning, she was back. Not even 8 a.m. yet, and she was already marching up our driveway in the same power walking stance as yesterday, clipboard under one arm, a red coffee mug in the other, this time dragging a small wagon behind her filled with folders and printed signs. We had just started our day. Mom was making pancakes, Dad was reconnecting the washer, and Grandpa was on the porch sipping his black coffee like nothing had happened. But I saw him watching her through those old military eyes, alert, calculating. You could always tell when Grandpa was about to go into strategic mode. She didn't bother knocking this time. She just stood at the bottom of the steps, yelling again. I'm giving you one last chance to avoid escalation. This is your final notice. Dad opened the door halfway. Ma'am, please go away. We're not interested in joining anything. Karen thrust a set of papers toward him. You're receiving a formal citation. Failure to comply with preliminary HOA regulations will result in fines and community action. Community action? Dad asked. We just moved in. We haven't even met the neighbors yet. You've met me. I represent the community, she replied with a tone so smug I could feel Grandpa clenching his jaw from 10 feet away. I've reviewed all legal documents, Karen continued. The entire block will vote to adopt the HOA charter next week. New residents must enroll preemptively to be part of the governing quorum that will determine neighborhood standards. What standards? I asked, stepping up beside Dad. No non-standard fencing. No political flags. No pickup trucks in driveways. No backyard pets without board approval. No lawn furniture visible from the curb. No unregulated gatherings, she said, glaring at the pancake breakfast happening behind our front window. You're not serious, I muttered. Karen locked eyes with me. I am. And if you defy these terms again, I'll be contacting the county housing board. That's when Grandpa stood up, slow and steady, and walked down the steps. You know, he said in a calm voice that somehow made Karen take a half step back, I've spent my life writing, enforcing, and interpreting rules. What you're doing isn't rulemaking. It's intimidation. She scoffed. No one's intimidated. Grandpa smiled slightly. Good. Then you won't mind if I return the favor. He reached into the inner pocket of his jacket and pulled out his phone. Let's get some facts on record. Karen's eyes widened as he began recording. This is General James C. Walker, retired. I'm documenting an individual's repeated attempts to coerce, harass, and unlawfully enforce association membership upon my family. No signatures exist. No deed restrictions apply. And this individual, identifying herself as Karen H., has now delivered threats of community action without legal jurisdiction. Karen backed up another step. You can't record me. That's illegal. In the state of Texas, Grandpa S. The next morning, the neighborhood felt different. Not quieter, just tense. You could feel it in the way neighbors peeked from behind curtains or lingered near their driveways pretending to sweep leaves that weren't there. Word had spread. Karen wasn't just bothering us. She'd been harassing nearly everyone on the block in her effort to build an HOA empire she could control. It started with signs. Everywhere. On stop signs, mailboxes, lamp posts, even taped to some trees. Neighborhood emergency meeting, attendance mandatory, 8 a.m. tomorrow at Oakfield Park. Beneath that, her new slogan, order. Standards. Unity. She even signed it, KHA Leadership Council. My mom read one of the signs and sighed. She's really doubling down. Dad crumpled one in his hands. She's trying to make herself mayor of the block. Grandpa? He just smiled. That small, dangerous smile he got right before things got interesting. He turned to Dad and said, let's attend her meeting. You want to go? I asked. Absolutely, Grandpa said, folding his arms. We're not hiding from her. We're ending this. But we're doing it by the book. So the next day, we showed up at Oakfield Park, 10 minutes late on purpose. Karen had gone full dictator, folding chairs arranged in rows, her little KHA flag flying behind a makeshift podium, and a printed packet titled Oakfield HOA Constitution stacked high on a folding table. Around 20 neighbors had gathered, most of them uncomfortable and unsure why they were even there. Karen wore a bright red blouse and spoke into a small megaphone, reading the so-called bylaws like they were sacred scripture. Lawn color must be uniform within 5 shades of approved green. No vehicle over 7 years old may be parked in driveways overnight. All exterior paint colors must be submitted for KHA approval. People were murmuring. Frowning. One woman leaned over and whispered, "Is this even legal?" Karen ignored the rising tension. Page 12 includes disciplinary procedures for non-compliant residents. Page 13 outlines the structure of the KHA Board of Discipline. Grandpa nudged me and whispered, "Board of what now?" Then Karen declared, "Now let's open the floor for public discussion." That's when Grandpa stood. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't bring a megaphone. He didn't need to. The way he stood, straight-backed, commanding, made everyone turn to look. "My name is General James Walker, retired United States Army," he said calmly. "And I have some serious concerns about what's happening here." Karen rolled her eyes. You've made your opposition clear. And I'm about to make it clearer, Grandpa said, stepping forward. First of all, there is no legal HOA. You can't enforce rules on people who never agreed to them. You can't fine people without a legally recognized charter. You can't create punishments and call it law just because you typed it up on Microsoft Word. A few neighbors nodded. Karen looked flustered. The HOA will be voted into effect next week. We're allowed to enforce trial standards in preparation. No, you're not, Grandpa said. We contacted the county clerk. Your HOA filing was rejected 2 days ago. You failed to provide the required 100% homeowner approval. The application is void. A collective gasp rippled through the group. Karen turned red. You're lying, she spat. Grandpa smiled. I brought copies. He handed out printouts from the county office, official documents, real signatures, all confirming that no HOA had been legally approved. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Neighbors started flipping through the papers. One man raised his hand. So, this whole meeting is fake? Legally? Yes, Grandpa said. It's a scam. Karen's voice cracked. This is slander. No, Grandpa replied. It's truth. I've been dealing with dictators since before you were born. They all start with rules that don't technically exist yet. Then they start threatening people. You tried to fine us, tried to submit fraudulent notices, and you lied to police. That's harassment. That's coercion. And that ends today. Another neighbor stood up. I don't want to be in an HOA. I never agreed to this. A third followed. She threatened to report my dog for unauthorized barking. I thought it was a joke. Karen started shouting. You're all sheep. You're falling for his act. Grandpa raised his hand calmly. That's enough. I've filed a formal complaint with the county. If you approach my family again, there will be a restraining order. If you send one more fake violation, we're pursuing criminal charges. And if you try to form another HOA without 100% documented approval, we'll file a civil suit for fraud and harassment. Karen's jaw dropped. You wouldn't dare. Grandpa looked her dead in the eye. Ma'am, I've stared down warlords in the Middle East. You're just a bored bully with a clipboard. The crowd went silent. Then applause broke out. Real applause. From people who had been too afraid to speak up until now. Karen stood frozen, her perfect little power structure collapsing around her. A few neighbors began tearing her signs off the trees. Someone rolled up the KHA flag. One man even dumped her stack of fake HOA constitutions into the nearest trash can. Karen grabbed her wagon and stomped away without a word. She didn't even look back. Dad shook Grandpa's hand. I don't know what we would have done without you. Grandpa just shrugged. Bullies hate one thing more than anything else, when someone calls their bluff in public. On the walk back home, Mom whispered, "Do you think she's done?" "Almost," Grandpa replied. "But just in case, we're not done either." That night, Grandpa emailed a full report to the local housing authority. He attached every document, every audio recording, and every photo we had of Karen's activities. He even included the video from the first day she called the police. He didn't do it for revenge, he did it to protect everyone else on the street. Before going to bed, he sat on the porch with a cup of tea, watching the stars. "You think she'll retaliate?" I asked him. He took a sip, thoughtful. "Probably. People like her usually try one more move when they're cornered." "What'll we do then?" I asked. Grandpa smiled without looking away from the sky. "We'll finish it." We didn't hear from Karen for 2 days. Not a word. Not a knock. Not even a flyer in the mailbox. It almost felt peaceful again. Grandpa even said the air smelled better without her stomping across our lawn every morning. Dad got back to work, Mom started planting flowers, and my little sister finally unpacked her books. It felt like we were settling in, finally. But just when we thought it was over, Karen played her final card. It was a Tuesday afternoon when a strange envelope appeared taped to our front door. No stamp. No return address. Just bold letters on the front that said, "Legal notice, cease and desist. Final warning." Inside was a poorly formatted letter accusing us of harassment, slander, and sabotaging a government-adjacent neighborhood operation. She threatened to sue for damages, emotional distress, and even claimed we owed her money for community damages. She also included a brand new version of her HOA contract, this time with our names pre-filled in. Like we had already signed. Grandpa read the entire thing without blinking. Then he laughed. It wasn't a big belly laugh. Just a short, cold chuckle like a man who had seen one trick too many. "She's desperate now," he said, folding the letter and setting it on the table. "Time to end this." He picked up the phone and called his old friend, Judge Reynolds, a retired circuit judge who lived 30 minutes away and owed Grandpa a favor from some ancient story involving a hunting trip and a broken Jeep. By dinner, the judge was sitting at our kitchen table with a folder of legal options and a clear strategy. "This is textbook fraudulent misrepresentation," Judge Reynolds said, flipping through Karen's fake notices. "She's impersonated a governing authority, falsified legal documents, and filed false police reports. That's 3 charges minimum. Maybe 4 if we dig deeper." Dad blinked. "So, what now?" "You have 2 options," the judge replied. "File a civil lawsuit for harassment and fraud, or bring it straight to the county DA's office and request criminal charges. Either way, she's going to wish she had just minded her business." Grandpa didn't hesitate. "We go to the DA." The very next morning, we handed everything over, the flyers, the notices, the recorded meeting, the letter, the fake signatures. We even gave them a video one neighbor had taken on their doorbell camera, catching Karen admitting that she had to lie to get people to fall in line. The DA's office didn't need long. They'd already received 2 other complaints about her from other families on the street. She wasn't just after us, she was trying to strong-arm every new homeowner into her fantasy HOA kingdom. That weekend, a county investigator paid Karen a visit. She tried her usual tactics, sweet talking, fake crying, pretending to be just a concerned citizen. It didn't work. Because by then, they had everything. Karen was served with a formal cease and desist from the county, and an investigation was opened for attempted fraud and civil harassment. She was officially barred from contacting us, or any other neighbor, about HOA matters again. But that wasn't the final blow. A week later, the county hosted a town meeting to discuss proposed zoning changes. Karen showed up, clipboard in hand, acting like she was still in charge. She tried to take the microphone and introduce herself as the acting president of Oakfield's Community Alliance. That's when the county clerk stepped forward and shut her down in front of the entire room. "Miss Karen H., he said over the mic, "you are currently under investigation for fraudulent misrepresentation. You have no authority to speak on behalf of this neighborhood, and you are no longer welcome to present on community matters until this issue is resolved." Dead silence. She stood frozen, red in the face, her mouth open like she was about to scream. But this time, no one clapped for her. No one supported her. No one even looked surprised. Her reign was over. Later that night, the neighbors gathered at our house for a little celebration. Nothing big. Just lawn chairs, lemonade, some burgers on the grill. No paperwork. No rules. Just people being neighbors again. Mike, the guy Karen had tricked into being treasurer, stood beside Grandpa and raised a toast. To the only general who ever won a war without firing a single shot. Everyone laughed. Grandpa smiled but waved it off. All I did was stand up. No, sir, Dad said. You reminded this street that we have rights. That's not just standing up. That's leadership. As the sun went down, and fireflies blinked across the yard, the neighborhood felt like a neighborhood again. No fake flags, no HOA banners, no fear of someone taping fines to your door because your grass was half an inch too tall. Just people. Just peace. And Karen? She put her house up for sale a month later. She claimed it was due to creative differences with the community, but everyone knew the truth. The truth that you can't build a kingdom on lies. That power without respect is nothing. That when you go toe-to-toe with a retired U.S. Army general, you better bring more than a clipboard. Before she left, she walked past our house one last time. No words. Just a long, bitter glance from the sidewalk. Grandpa gave her a small nod from the porch. Not angry. Not smug. Just, done. And that was it. I asked Grandpa later what made him keep his cool through everything. He looked at me, then out at the quiet street, and said, because battles don't always need fists, kid. Sometimes, all it takes is the truth, and a little backbone. He was right. And thanks to him, our first month in our new home went from disaster to victory.